from what I read, maybe he's changed some stuff since, but he would record, full on drum tracks, like real drum tracks. And then he would split it up and then have essentially like MIDI keys linked to different samples of these recorded drums. And then he would stack them. So you wouldn't really know like if they were playing real stuff or not, because it was real recorded, right, but it wasn't real played for the track. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. They're triggering it like with MIDI, like the actual real.
Exactly. So it's like you could say that this was all sound design and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's just like you're kind of fucking with different sounds. Then you figure out your bag of tricks. And then, I'm not the best sound designer. I'm not the best producer. I'm not the best arranger. But I got my bag of tricks. And that is the quote unquote.
And you have your taste, right? You have like the things that you like, and you have aspirations for what you want it to sound like.
Exactly. And here's the funny thing about taste. I was talking about this with one of my buddies yesterday. All taste is like being really confident about something that is technically not cool. So like, the difference between something, like for instance, if we want to talk about like J-pop, like pop,
Japanese pop.
Yeah. That shit is crazy. And something that's really funny about that is like a lot of those records, so when hip hop or pop first came over to Japan, I've like studied this shit a lot. Like I'm so into it.
Have you been to Japan?
No, I really want to go though.
Okay, you got to go, man.
Yeah. The thing that I find fascinating about it is the song is there, but the actual intention behind the track was completely different, and like how the culture experienced it was completely different. So like when hip hop and pop music first came over to Japan, there wasn't venues. Like they would play in, martial arts arenas and stuff like that. And like, instead, like bodyguards and security was like a thing in the States because like you would have fans jump up, but it didn't particularly translate. They just thought that, at the time it seemed as though that was part of the performance. So you would have like these martial arts gyms that people would play at with bodyguards, but they weren't needed. So it's like you have this really strange derivative of what that music was originally and then what it became. But the cool thing about it is that if you weren't completely hip to the intentions of why these things were actually made and you're just super confident about it, that keeps going for years and years, and then it becomes its own sound. And so like some of these really shitty sounds, like, there's this artist, oh man, I'm going to forget his name, underground hip hop artist from like the early 2000s in Tokyo.
I'm certainly not going to know this.
Yeah. It's like Zebra or something. But all of the sounds are like incredibly derivative. Like you're just like, what the fuck? But it's gone on for so many years, and it's like, you know what? That's their sound. Like that's actually really cool. So
yeah, it's interesting you say that. It's kind of like, I feel like even the 808 is kind of like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's like the sound of pop music now, right? Like the 808 is just like a drum machine. It's like a synthetic drum.
Exactly.
And like, that's what we all want to hear.
So like, for instance, I live in Charlotte, right? The baby, he just came out of Charlotte. One of the biggest, hip hop artists in the world right now. And, his song Shug that came out, I mean, a lot of the sounds are a little dinky. Like there's like some weird dinky sounds in there, but like it works. Like it's really cool. Super confident about it. It's just badass. And like the confidence is what actually like brings out the trend, And I'm super into that, man. I'm like really trying to dive deep into like some more of those derivative sounds that are like maturing in their own culture. Just like really fucking into it. So yeah, sound design for me, like the actual craft of sound design of just like seeing how waves meld together is so incredibly fucking boring. Like I will go to sleep, but, but it's like computer programming, like, like it's like zeros and ones for me. But when I think about like the actual history behind the different sounds and stuff, I'm just like, oh, that's a funny story, or like, that's fucking weird. I love that. And like recreating that and then having my own spin on it. That's fun.
The story of the sound.
Yeah, anything can be convinced that it's cool. That's the music industry, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wise words.
Weird, right?
So what? Yeah. So what does your workflow look like these days when you're working with artists and also approaching a song?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny, man. Like, there's two things. There's production and then there's like actual development. And like, they're two very different things with both extremely unique challenges. But I have like the actual production aspect pretty systemized at this point. The vast majority of artists I work with can self-produce a little bit. Like they'll have like, dinky version of Ableton Lite or Logic or something, and they'll make a demo. Then they'll send me their stems. And then, in the industry, like I guess like in the inner circles of like super crazy slang, I'm called a finisher. And all that means is like, you give me a song at 60%, I'll get it to 100%. And most producers now that are like writing for pop or hip hop or something like that, they're making stuff from scratch. Like they make the track, whatever, and then they pitch it. I get songs that are already like kind of half built, but they just...
That's great.
Yeah, it's just what I like most. I like making an artist the best version of themselves.
Right.
Now, naturally, I have like my own sound that comes along with that, but I'm not writing the tracks. Like they write the basics and like, they tell me, different references that they love, things that they love, their story, all this shit. And then I take that sound that they send me and then I repurpose it and kind of build it up. I'll mess with the arrangement or whatever. Reproduce.
They give you like total free range basically to like.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is like, when I first start working with somebody, cause you got to realize it's, it's not collabs. Like unless it's like any label work or like any sort of stuff like that, I am, my standard deal is they own 100%, like of everything. They own 100% of the master, publishing, and writer's share. But I just think that's how it works. But I'm paid up front. So it ranges depending on what people's needs are, but anything can range from like, $1,200 to $3,000 for, production and development. It just depends like what is actually needed for each single, but that's the general like kind of production process. And when you first take on a client, even if there's a lot of trust built, through your brand or whatever, you got to meet them where they're at, so there's a couple of things. Firstly, it's their song. You can build in like over time, crazier ideas, but at the start, you got to just prove to them that you're on their side. There is that initial trust you have to build. Like, let's make it how you need. Now, sometimes I'll do like a different vocal effect or something just to like see if maybe they're into it. But if they're not, cut it off, boom, and then we'll kind of move on. And next song or the song after, I'll start doing a little bit more kind of creative ideas once that initial trust is built. Additionally, you got to meet where the artist is at, meaning, skill level wise. If their vocals are not that natural artist pop voice, you can't make that for them. You can't have them retrack it because they're just not there yet. Like, use time as a tool. You got to meet them where they're at and build with them. If somebody is, as a joke, but like if somebody's fucking tone deaf, if they're in the studio and you're with them in person, a lot of the stuff I do is remote, but if you're with them in person, don't have them retrack it 1,000 times because their performance, even if their pitch is fucked up, their performance is going to become less after a while. They're not going to be as into it because they're going to start losing confidence. So if they're a little pitchy, that is your job to fix. If you can technically fix it, don't be lazy. You got to meet them where they're at. And some people are just, it's not a perfect take yet. There's some people that I work with that are, but you got to meet them where they're at or else like you are doing them an injustice as a producer.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to like really like, whip somebody into shape and really like, give them tough love until they give the performance you want out of them. But sometimes it's not possible and you just need to like let them be them.
There's a time where you can poke somebody, but if you're just constantly punching them in the face, like they're going to get knocked out. You know, like if you,
Totally.
I love UFC. Fucking watch that all the time. I've done, we talked about this before the podcast, but like I've done Krav Maga for years because I was a Jewish kid that was picked on in high school. So, but the thing is like I'm really into UFC because of that. Like I watch a bunch of MMA stuff. I'm just super into it. It's crazy, and like they'll always talk about whatever fighters, like their corner, basically all their coaches, and you really start to get a realization of like the fighters who last a long time in the industry, and it's like almost always because of their corner. You can hear what they say. Like when they're fighting, people will be coaching them. Their corner will be coaching them and like screaming out what to do and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
And the most recent fight that happened in Jacksonville, there was no crowd, so you could actually like hear what the corner was screaming at them. It's kind of fucking weird. Like,
wow.
But you can hear what they're saying, and it's kind of crazy, man. Like the people who know how to push, and then the people who just have the wrong expectation altogether. You can only grow step by step, but you can't just leap into a new position. Like your success is there when you're ready for it.
Yeah. So you really need to understand the artists that you're working with. Like,
exactly. Like if I'm
on a psychological level.
Yeah. If I just like give a couple cues, like, lower or like to, like left or what, I don't fucking know, like whatever,
Yeah, sure.
As opposed to people just screaming like while you're just getting hammered to the face, like get the fuck up. Like he can't, like he's out, bro. Like, so you have to know like when that breaking point is where like they're on the ground and like, I think they're not getting up. So never let them get to the ground because they'll actually stop working with you,
Right. Absolutely.
So man, love UFC. Anyways, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. What do you listen for the first time you hear a song?
The artist's goals and expectations from their face. So I try to have a call. I try to listen to that first before I hear actually the song.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, man, you have to realize, like, is their goal art oriented or is it following success? Yeah. Well, not even success, because like everybody views it as different.
Yeah.
Right. It's like following, or whatever.
Like fame.
So yeah. So do they have like, what are their artistic goals and what are their PR goals? Like as simple as that. Right.
Okay.
And I always try to explain it like this. There's two sides. All the way to the left is for it's for the artist. All the way to the right is for the fans.
It's the continuum of artistry.
Exactly. So all the way to the left, if it's for the artist, you can make the weirdest shit. The arrangement doesn't matter. Like you can just do some wild shit. That's why, you'll have experimental jazz. That's why barely anybody listens to it. But a couple of people who get it are, super cocky about liking it. They're like, oh, this is the stuff you need to understand. But it's not a huge audience, but it's very fulfilling for the artist. Now, the further right you go, where you want that commercial viability, there's guidelines you have to follow. For instance, if your song is 11 minutes long, people aren't going to get through it 99% of the time. If you want any kind of commercial viability, you need to have a hook. Like you need to have a chorus. You need something that people sing back. That makes them repeat it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I never just have I wake up in the morning, I'm just like, oh fuck, I need to replay that free jazz record I heard yesterday. Like, like like I never just wake up and I'm like, I need to fucking repeat that like right now.
Let's get the Coltrane going, man.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, so that's kind of the problem is like, you have to really decide where on that scale you want to be. For the artists that work with me, typically I'm like center right. Like, we want some commercial viability, but we want it to be authentic to you. So like, let's take what you want and like what you're, the sound that you really like. But we're not going to make this shit something that is derivative where you just feel like you're trying to impersonate a top 40 track. I make pop songs that say fuck you to pop. That's basically it.